necessarily the 4 best decks. It's not necessarily a target lineup. It's just here is what we predict are going to be the 6 or 7 most popular decks in playoffs, and we'll just build a matchup spread against those so that we win games on average. And when I say we, I do very specifically mean it, because I believe xBlyzes and Fled practice together. Fled, America's Grandmaster, practiced together for this tournament, because strange bedfellows were made due to the fact that Grandmasters kind of had to find practice partners to practice with on the early access round to be able to get reps in with any of these decks. So, groups were broken up and time was put in here and there with different partners. I believe Fled and xBlyzes are bringing the same lineup to this tournament, which is very interesting to see.
Yeah, and also with that rogue being banned, there's an argument where, well, it's achieved something, because when a lineup doesn't just do one thing, the ban gets a little bit weird for their opponent, right? It's like, okay, I'll remove the rogue, but then I have to face this stuff instead. So, arguably it's paid off here for xBlyzes anyway, but already diving into game number 1, is this Control Warrior versus the OTK Demon Hunter? And this is a matchup that we actually have put some time into, right, Sol? And have you got any strong thoughts about the newer version of this warrior now that the mini set's been out?
I have strong thoughts about everything, Raven. Yeah, I think Control Warrior is actually pretty cracked right now. It's surprised me a little bit. I wasn't as quickly on the Crash hype train as other people were. People saw Crash and they were like, Control Warrior's back, baby. Like, all Warriors are now tier 1 immediately because of this one card. And I was like, well, let's just wind it back in a little bit. Like, it is a 3-9, let's just not quite get to that point. But no, it turns out I was wrong. And actually, Warrior has been elevated enormously by Crash being in there. Yeah. I think particularly Control Warrior has gained an awful lot of advantages in an awful lot of positions. But this matchup is not conventional. It almost doesn't matter how much armor you can stack, because the ability to do 144 is, very reasonable if you get the right discounts and the right amount of time with Demon Hunter. Far more important is the ability to draw Bulwark of Azzinoth in this matchup, because, again, going back to that weird, hodgepodge kind of idea, one of the theories I had looking at this lineup at first is maybe he's looking at Control Warrior. That's why he has Weapon Rogue, but then you'd want to put oozes in your decks, right? Because generally the decks that beat Control Warrior lose to Bulwark, and that's not the case either with xBlyzes' deck. He does not have an ooze in his Demon Hunter, which in my opinion means he is unfavored against Control Warrior, but we will see how things go.
And of course, I will just instantly highlight the second X factor outside of the Bulwark, which is of course Mutanus in Thijs' list. And that, I think, was the first thing everyone jumped to when Mutanus was announced was, oh, it can just get Il'gynoth just straight away. That was probably the first target. It's from what I saw.
Does everyone hate OTK Demon Hunter that much? What?
It's silly.
All right, I'm going to war here, right? Primarily aimed at the APAC casters, because they do it all the time where it's like, oh, look, OTK Demon Hunter won a game on turn 6 or turn 7. What a stupid deck. They literally cast games of Token Druid all day, which end on turn 5, consistently, with 0 relevant decisions over the course of the entire game. Mage games end on turn 2, as opposed to whether they play Incanter's Flow or not. Same with Rogue. Demon Hunter games are 5 turns longer than the average game in Hearthstone right now. I don't know what everyone's problem is.
My question is, because we don't really cast Token Druid mirrors, am I allowed to not like this deck?
Yes, you may not like it.
I actually don't mind the deck. It's just, I think people just, and by people I mean the player base in general, just generally dislike being killed in one turn from unlimited health. So yeah, just having the Mutanus to potentially kill that. But while we spoke for 2 seconds, it feels like xBlyzes has just blitzed through most of the game. He has the 1 mana Il'gynoth because of course he does.
Yes, exactly, which is again going to make my rant look very stupid as he just hits 1 mana Il'gynoth. I was genuinely ranting then. I almost swore really loud. Did you hear it?
I can actually tell when you're actually angry and not just being silly. I've spent enough time with you.
Yeah. But yeah, back to the original point, like, Mutanus to me, when people, like, first off, people were having the debate, like, is this good, is this bad, or whatever. And then to me, it was the point of, like, well, this is a N'Zoth meta that we're playing in, right? Like, that was the first thing that really convinced me as, like, okay, we're probably going to play this card in most control decks, because the ability to snipe opposing N'Zoth is just such a big deal.
Well, you're a strange person. I was like, let me kill OTK combo pieces. Let me kill Alusha from my priest opponent.
Kill Alusha?
Yeah.
Okay.
Here, though, so far, XBlyzes has obviously blitzed through his deck. Down to 13 cards, hit the Il'gynoth, but without a Moarg in sight.
Oh! Thijs is playing with fire here, Raven. Like, he does not realize how close he is to just dead. He's just choosing not to believe XBlyzes at the moment, but there is so much damage potential.
I mean, playing with Fellfire.
No.
What? That was just good.
Illidari. Ooh! Okay. Decision time. Yeah. I think it ends up being card draw here because obviously we're staring at Bulwark in the hand and getting rid of that is going to be key to victory here potentially for XBlyzes. But I think if he spectrals into the right tools here, he can actually still... Oh, no, okay, the philosophy isn't actually discounted. My bad.
He's also just missing Moargs, right?
That's what I was saying, yeah. I was about to say,
right,
if he just ripped into the Moarg there, and then was able to, accounting for the philosophy being 0, he actually had a ton of damage still with 1 mana Il'gynoth, even after the Spectral Sight was being cast. But obviously the philosophies were only 0 because they were being discounted by the Illidari studies, so he wouldn't have had enough. Counting damage in hand right now is actually a fairly smart thing to do. So he has 3 damage, 4 damage, 5 damage, 6 damage. So it's a 21 damage Fell Screen Blast plus the weapon swing.
With how much mana spent. Because that's important, right? He will need the mana to play the Moargs if he draws them.
Enough? 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 plus hero power? Yeah. Would have been enough. Is that enough now? It doesn't get the buff from the Talented Arcanist, so it's not enough spell damage. Obviously, it's so hard doing this without Moarg.
And also, you then hit the point, right, where is it just Sigil Runner then to draw Moarg? Yeah, which I think I'm on board with. Oh my.
Oh! Okay, that's got to be close. Hang on. 3, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so you can only go 3, 5, 6, and then 2. So his first one does 5, 15. The second one does 6. He's still short, yeah. It's not enough.
No!
Not real. Only one of them is discounted, so he does need the turn. And I think this will now be the trigger for Thijs, right? There's no way he can greed this any further from this point. It has to be Bulwark time. He's seen so much draw, and now he's seen a Moarg get duplicated, and he knows the first Moarg costs 0. He can very clearly die this turn. It is not difficult.
Yeah, and I'm going to do a silly suggestion. But was there ever a reason not to play Philosophy that turn?
To not give the signal?
Yeah. Because look how cheap his hand is, right? He has the mana to play Philosophy next turn and still do it, right?
True.
I'm just thinking of the really strange things that could affect the outcome here.
Yeah. I don't think it's a big deal because honestly, with how many cards just got drawn that turn anyway, I don't think Thijs would be willing to greed this any further. Plus, it's just the natural resolution of when his last weapon finished, right? Which just made it feel like a good turn anyway. But it's a good point to raise, certainly. I think if it was in a tighter situation, that might be something worth talking about. Oh, start poking away.
I was getting scared for just a second. It's like, don't lock in the combo, please.
Demons. I bet you can do this.
It's going to skull. Okay.
Warlock.
Alright, well that's Infinity. There's a real 0-mana Moarg, a 0-mana Moarg, and a 2-mana Moarg. So for 2 mana, he can
deal 1 billion damage.
Deal 1 billion damage, exactly, with 1 mana Il'gynoth. So he's now set. He just has to live and poke his way through all these Bulwark charges. It almost doesn't matter from this point how much armor Thijs gets to generate in the meantime. Right. He might be able to challenge that statement at some point, but more important for Blyze is just don't die.
And don't let Thijs draw Mutanus, I guess.
Yes. Well, again,
he has a lot of protection.
He does, yeah. And these Ethereal Org merchants are not particularly important to massive amounts of damage. There might still be an intersection, right, where it becomes relevant. Thijs gets so much armor that +1 spell damage being thrown down the drain does end up being important, but probably not. Does he have enough now?
Oh, can he just hit through?
Oh, he can just go I-beam, Fell Screen Blast, Fell Screen Blast. Yeah. This is genius.
Okay, nice.
I did not see this at all.
Yeah, you can just like pre-dump it.
Yeah, he does have to pay 3 mana for the I-beam. Actually, I guess he doesn't, because he doesn't actually need the Talented Arcanist to be played, and he can outcast it from the left. Yeah, it's just infinity. There are definitely ways to get this wrong.
I'm just going to be quiet and watch. Looks good to me, though.
Yep, good enough.
Nice. That was a really, really good spot there. Honestly, I wasn't even looking at it and did not even like just click for me until he did it. That you could, of course, just go for just 1 plain Fell Screen Blast to take 1 durability off, and then suddenly, well, yeah, 2 attacks and I-beam another Fell Scream. That's enough. Really good spot there from Blyze, and honestly, things like that sort of negate some of the slip-ups we've seen him have in the past, right? Especially with Demon Hunter.
Yeah, again, it was a little bit sticky there. Like, I kind of fell silent in the middle because my worry when he started doing this was paying 3 mana for the I-beam, right? Because the problem is you can't play Talented Arcanist and then dump the I-beam, right? Because then you've used your Talented Arcanist buff on the I-beam, which is not what you want to do, because the I-beam's going to do 0 damage to your opponent's face. It's going to deal with a Bulwark charge. So he ended up having to do it from the other side instead and just not use the Talented Arcanist at all, which I didn't count. I counted the way with the Talented Arcanist. So I wasn't sure if he had enough damage to get over at the end, but it was, I believe, 48 even after the I-beam ended up doing 32 because of that spell damage. So plenty of damage in the end, but I think Blyze might have just got stuck there. I don't think he had everything perfectly mapped out. There was a bit of, improvisation mid-turn, let's say, as he course corrected, but again, it fits in perfectly with the description of Blyze at the beginning of the day, right? Like, he'll figure it out. He'll find a way.
It'll be fine. It looks like next up we are going to have this Rogue from Thijs going up against Blyze's Priest. And again, Blyze... we can take a look at Thijs' Rogue first, but it is just the standard Miracle Rogue, right? I think these 30 cards are as close to set in stone as you're ever going to get for a deck.
It does seem that way, yeah. We did see it just a couple of weeks ago where Viper wasn't playing Cult Neophyte. He was playing Wandmaker instead. But yes, it certainly does seem to have resolved down to almost exactly this list. And it took quite some time to get here. I was talking to Casey even because I was just sort of reminiscing as we're getting to the end of the season about some of the stuff that's happened throughout the season. I was also feeling kind of sassy on Twitter yesterday, so I was tweeting about that time where everyone just brought Kazakus in Libram Paladin for no reason, like they'd never played a game of Hearthstone before. And then Casey replied, is like, yeah, remember when no one had Alexstrasza Tenwu combo in Rogue either? And I was like, oh, that's right. Like, people just didn't do that originally. And then slowly over time, like, the deck just morphed into the Goliath that we see here, which, regardless of what Neil Lorinda Bond will tell you, is not a bad deck that uses every matchup in the game or whatever nonsense he spouts. It's a very, very good deck. I think has fallen a little bit in power level in the mini set because it really didn't get anything. The rogue cards really are doing setting up an archetype that just doesn't really exist right now, it seems like, and maybe we'll get into that more in the future. But it seems like quite a lot of other decks have picked up a few nice tools here and there, and Rogue just hasn't. So I think it's fallen a little bit in power level because of that. But I still think it just has exactly the amount of tools it needs to win any given matchup.
Meanwhile, his opponent is going to be XBlyzes, of course, on this Priest. And again, this is just a good starting point for the N'Zoth Priest. Again, there is the addition of the Soul Mirror in there, the Mutanus is one of the new cards, but the Scoundrels are there, the Light Shower Elementals, and in general, Subtle, how does Rogue fare versus Priest?
Badly. That's kind of based upon classic Control Priest, though. I do think this N'Zoth Priest build has picked up a lot of percentage in some matchups and then lost a little bit of percentage in others. Right. And I think Rogue is potentially one of the matchups where it's lost a little bit of percentage. I know some people will disagree with that vociferously, but in my opinion, it's true. My main problem with this matchup is like, it feels super in-depth from the Rogue side. Like when you're playing it on the Rogue side, you always feel like you're absolutely galaxy braining your way through the matchup. But honestly, it almost comes down to a 50-50 at some point in the game where you have to either play around Blademaster Apotheosis by not going all in and being greedy and setting up for combo damage later in the game, or you play around Mindrender Lucia by just dumping all your stuff as quickly as possible being as aggressive as you possibly can. And those two strategies are diametrically opposed to each other. So you kind of just have to pick one based on little to no indication from your opponent. And that can be very frustrating from the Rogue side of things.
And even at that point, saying you have to pick one is probably a bit generous because a lot of the time your hand chooses that option for you, right? Because we've seen it, I think, yesterday. I can't remember the game, though, sorry, where, or it was last weekend. It's all merged into one this season, where one of the players just had the aggro opening. So what are they supposed to do? Take a really powerful aggro opening and just stall against Priest? Like, so it's kind of tough there. Thijs, though, right now, has a very, very solid opening. Foxy Fraud into Swindle after getting the Octo down is almost exactly what you want in most matchups.
It is. Yep. Absolutely insane. Shadow Step now is... Oh, it's almost deck in hand on turn 4 here for Thijs. He has the ability to use Brain Freeze to proc his Octobot at some point, and then between cheap field contact, Shadow Steps, One Thieves, and then additional draws he picks up off the top. He can draw a massive amount of his deck. So remember, if that Foxy Fraud survives on board, he can Shadow Step that instead of anything that's on board and potentially play 2 other cards for 0 mana as well. So it's already looking very explosive here for Thijs. But step 1 still does need to be achieved, which is to Procto the Octo.
Oh, and there's Apotheosis. I almost didn't even look at the other 2 cards, Subtle, just because I know Samaro's in hand for XBlyzes. Like, why would you pick anything else?
Oh. This is one of those 300 IQ Octobots that you can go for here. Because you have a Shadow Step in your hand, there's the out of going for a Secret Passage here, picking up like Guardian Org Merchant, and then just being able to play the entire Secret Passage hand that you draw, because the Guardian Org Merchant discounts those 4 cards. And then when you get back to your regular hand next turn, you then just have Shadow Step do it again with the Octobot. Looks like that might be what Thijs is looking at. Yeah, alright. Alright, I see you, Thijs. Alright, Prize Plunderer does the job too. I thought the prophecy was going to come to pass.
Give me that. That's what I want.
Yeah, instead Thijs is going to get rid of the Scorpid, keep as many minions as possible on board, and just wait for another day with that Octoprat.
Yep, which is certainly fine too. I think if those other 2 cards were not Wicked Stab and Jandis, then we might have seen the discount play everything line instead. But yeah, not too much value in the other 2 cards that he was offered. Wow, okay, double whammy from XBlyzes. He has both the rogue beating cards in hand here. Oh, that's sick. And right on time, Guardian Org Merchant.
He's like, I'm here.
So now this is it, right? Like, it almost feels like we're at a crossroads already of like, do you want to use a Shadow Step to discount this hand so you can draw really quickly and go aggro? Because you've almost kind of made your you've made your bed and are lying in it at that point, right? With one Shadow Step down, that's damage lost over the course of the game. Quite potentially, but it does look like Thijs is going to go in for it here. It's nice and early still, so there's no real big AoE that can come out from xBlyzes on this turn most of the time. So I do respect it.
But even with all the card draw, well, basically it's next draw, I guess. Okay. It does feel like he's close to being all in. I guess the secret passage does dig him out of any problems, even if it gets cleaned up, but that's about it.
Yikes. Hysteria, the field contact, I guess? Yeah, you know what the nut draw was this turn? Palm reading.
You want to just take the hit next turn?
Yeah, you just go palm reading and then you have Blademaster Apo the next turn, but it looks like xBlyzes is just deciding it's too much. He just can't leave all that damage up. He's just going to play out the Blademaster here. The alternative was to Hysteria the field contact, which, let's say it just crashes into like the prize plunderer. There's still so much damage left on the other side of the board, but one card off. Disaster.
And Hysteria the Manquing now, though.
Yep. Yep.
And then, xBlyzes can snipe the Jandis. Oh wait, it's going to get played.
It's going to get played right now.
Imagine. It's one of those just mixed bag feelings, right? If you a Jandis with Mutanus.
Okay. It's fairly awkward for Hysteria, isn't it? What happens here? Now they both get... Okay, yeah, because the illusion's on the other one, it doesn't matter. Yep, that's a smart way of doing it. I like it. Yep, xBlyzes has been here before. He doesn't pick the wife.
Also, the old turn 10 Mutanus, 10 wound Mutanus. Like...
Yo! Okay. Yeah, no, you're onto something. I love it. I love where your head's at.
I mean, all xBlyzes needs to do now, he's kind of survived the initial push, right, as you edge towards turn 7, 8, 9. So then he just has to stop the, or try and reduce down the threat of the Alexstrasza plus Wicked Stabs.
Right. Combustion doesn't get there. Probably just Primordial Studies in that case. Needs big draws. Wicked Stab's not really it. Needs Shadow Step, Prize Plunderer. Oh, Alex is not it either. Blood Mage or Stewart. Yeah, goes with the Blood Mage. I think that's smart. Still has 2 Wicked Stabs left, so cheap spell damage is very effective here. Not really lacking for value in his hand, which is the situation you'd be looking for the Stewart instead.
xBlyzes going to say, nope. Gets to throw a Wicked Stab and the...
Yeah, so the weird part of this is doing it while neophyted, which does make life a little bit awkward, because by putting the Tenwu in his opponent's hand, he kind of had access to the nuts, right? Yeah, exactly this, where you play stuff and then you end your turn with the Mind Render Lucia, so you just get your hand back and Thijs doesn't get to disrupt you at all. But because he did it while the Neophyte was active, he couldn't really weave in the Wicked Stabs alongside that as well, which is a bit awkward.
Oh, and now an Octo getting drawn. Oh, that's quite the reduction, Sol.
It is, yeah. It's interesting because, like, I think the cool part of that turn was set up very quickly and smoothly multiple turns ago. And again, casting xBlyzes series at a high level is very hard because everything happens so quickly. But back from the Tenwu pick, I think he had that set up the entire time, right? because he knows that that play is insanely powerful, where you just mind render your opponent's hand, you just Tenwu the mind render, and then you just replay the mind render. It wasn't about him having a Tenwu in hand, it was about his opponent having a Tenwu in hand, so he could abuse that. But because it was then done on a neophyte turn, maybe there was just a little wrench in the works that xBlyzes wasn't really considering. Like maybe he was just too tunneled on the plan he'd set up for multiple turns. It's hard to say, because it was still a very effective Hearthstone turn.
Okay.
Soul Mirror, anyone? Yeah.
And wait for these to flip around a couple of times.
Yep. There we go. No one's impressed. We've all seen it before. Come on, get on with it.
The path is clear.
Is Soul Mirror not filthy?
Isn't he just dead? The Soul Mirror.
Job done.
Is he?
Well, they'd be 16 damage, and could he remove a minion as well?
It's true. It does. I mean, the thing is, he discounts everything in his own hand as well, right?
Right.
So he could then like Tenwu the Blade Master, and then Blade Master Apo. Can't you do all that? I think you can, right?
Wait, what Blade Master?
The Blade Master that he has from the Soul Mirror.
Oh, sure. Right, okay, I was confused for a second then. I'm losing control over who's got what at this point.
That might be one too much mana. I'm not sure, but like it felt like it was particularly powerful to scam the discount, but maybe it wasn't worth. Rush draw a card. Okay.
All right. Plunderer, that'll do.
Give me that. Not what I want.
Surely if he's been keeping track, he has to know that there's like a good chance of him eating the Alex.
Yeah. It definitely works this turn, by the way, right? Like you Soul Mirror for 7, you Tenwu the Blade Master for 1, you replay the Blade Master for 1, you Apo for 1. That's exactly 10 mana, right? So it is definitely possible this turn. It's less good this turn because less minions survive the Blade Master, the Soul Mirror in the first place. But then again, he doesn't even need that much healing.
I wonder.
Could probably also just get away with just dropping the Zoth at this point. He has an Elemental, he has the Pirate, right? Doesn't have the Murloc, of course, it's in hand, but that's like the least important one to pull from the Zoth.
We just Sleepy Dragon. Yep.
I'm almost out of cards.
Fear now with the discount, though. Hang on a minute. Hang on. There's a prize plunderer alive on the board. There's a Guardian Org Merchant in hand, and there's a Shadow Step. So if you Guardian your 1/4, Shadow Step the prize plunderer, play everything else.
Wait, what's everything else?
Can't do because you've paid 1 mana for the Guardian. Just Alex Wicked Stab is all I want.
Oh, because
so that's still one too many.
Yeah. And also as well, you'd have to kill the Elemental anyway, wouldn't you? Which should heal for an 8.
Yeah. Yep.
So close, but not quite.
Yeah, it was worth counting though. Like, obviously it's not because you can't actually do all of the Wicked Stabs, but if you could, even if you did all that first and they healed for 8, you still then get to go face with all your minions after the fact as well, because you've Shadow Stepped the Prize Plunderer and pushed through with that. So it was still a lot of damage, but just didn't work with mana constraints.
Yeah, and I think this is 16 if he goes face with everything, which he's not going to, so 13.
I think Thijs knows that this seems unlikely.
Thijs also knows it's a Tenwu, right?
Yes, he does.
Oh, hang on. Does Soul Mirror do enough? Even if it's not without doing the fancy Tenwu stuff?
I'm just mad
Soul
that-
Mirror Apotheosis?
I'm just mad that the Octobot got procced, so now it can't do the cool thing anymore. Like, I don't care if it wasn't the best play, it was objectively the coolest play that you could do.
Yeah, just gotta trade off and replay.
Hysteria something in the meantime, because why
Yeah.
not? Yeah, it seems good.
Come, friend. Let's see what you've got.
Cleans up a couple of opposing minions most of the time,
And-
he says tentatively.
And again, like, I'm not saying this was a big blunder, but Thijs knew that the Tenwu was in hand, right? So he knew that if he left N'Zoth up, this could happen.
Yep. It was a big sacrifice to trade into it, though. That was like 2 whole minions that smashed through, but you're absolutely right. But it just might be one of those catch-22 situations.
Oh, and that's why I said straight away, I'm not saying it was a big blunder.
Yeah.
It's just, it was something that Thijs was aware of and purposely chose to be available for xBlyzes.
Mirror clears. Not going to look any harder than that, because xBlyzes is not going to look any harder than that. He'll play the first play he sees that wins the game.
xBlyzes moving up 2-0 in a pretty close game, actually. You could see for a while there, Thijs just had the pressure, was setting up the potential lethals turn after turn, and xBlyzes having to be pressured into just playing a Samuro to just try and reduce down that pressure in the early game. Something you never really want to do as Priest, to just play a Samuro out when you're getting pressured down. But xBlyzes did turn it around, and that now means, Sol, that xBlyzes is only 1 game away from continuing on and getting his next match straight after this one to try and get into that final day. And who knows, xBlyzes, we might just be looking at xBlyzes as our player going to the World Championships.
Yeah, and I do want to just talk about 2 things that xBlyzes did, which I'll hold my hands up and say I probably wouldn't have made these plays, and I probably would have lost the game because of it. The first is the one you highlighted, with just the Blade Master pretty much on curve when he had Apo in hand already, where he was, super liberal, I guess, whatever your word of choice is, the opposite of greedy in using it. The second was the Elucia turn, right, where all he really denied from his opponent on that turn was a Tenwu. But because the play of Elucia, Tenwu, replay Elucia, double swap so your opponent doesn't get to use any of your cards, because that interaction in itself is just so powerful, he just considered that worth it, right? And I was saying the whole time, like, maybe this isn't worth with the Cult Neophytes because you don't get to deny anything else. Didn't matter, it was just enough, right? Like, just denying the Tenwu was just enough. You saw how fine the margins were at the end. With Thijs' last few resources, where an additional Tenwu there, I think, would have made the big difference. And xBlyzes just set it up 2 turns out, right? He played the South Sea Scoundrel, he put the Tenwu in his opponent's hand, and then he abused it. And there was even a nod on the turn after that, where Thijs played Secret Passage, where xBlyzes nodded, and I still hadn't quite caught on to what his plan was at that point. I was like, what's that nod? Like, why is he so happy about Secret Passage? That seems like a weird thing to be happy about. But obviously at that point, it means that there was no way Thijs could play that Tenwu out of his hand before he was able to use the Mind Render Lucia on the following turn. So that was a very, very clean setup from xBlyzes. And I just love seeing games that I don't think I would have won, because that's just a good feeling, right? Like, it really goes to show skill expression in the game we are competing in, which does seem to be an important thing to be able to show exists.
Yeah, 100%. And it does mean that xBlyzes is going to end the series one way or another on this warrior. It's the Rush warrior, so it's not the control one we've been seeing for the majority of the day. It does have a few new additions with the Crash, Mutanus as well being included, a couple of cuts here and there. And overall, I'm very interested to see where warrior that is not control goes, because I've seen some people build a more menagerie style. I've seen some people focus still on rush as the main component. I've seen some players focus on like frenzy now by cycling through the deck really quick and having Sourfang in the list. And it does generally feel that warrior at the moment just has so many different ways you can build it that, you know, at some point someone's going to find what we would deem the best after this many sets come out. But for now, Xblyzes is sticking to more or less standard rush warrior.
And even Orange on top of that messing with weapon warrior.
I was playing that today. Yeah.
Oh, you really? Okay. Yeah. How did it go?
4-0 actually so far, so I didn't play too many games, but sometimes you just beat people up. It's great. I don't think people are right now. I wonder how many people I face on ladder who played when Totem Golem was a thing. Yeah, they're clearly not prepared for it, so they don't remember.
I did. We did some test games against Gia where she built a deck that was kind of similar to what Orange was doing. And she just went 1-mana weapon into Totem Golem, and every buff landed on Blade Master every single game, just over and over again for like 4 or 5 games. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not doing this.
There's that and Warmaul Challenger are just the nuts, right?
Yeah.
Diving back into this one, Xblyzes has your favorite card on one.
Did Thijs just do like the hand across the throat, like it's over, pack it up, Jesh? Like he just drew Ganarg against Rogue, and that's it. That's game. I mean, yes, but also that's quite funny.
Xblyzes is quite funny. Limited options. I'm sure Xblyzes would have liked to just play Parade Leader out here, but the Foxy Fraud having the trade instantly is not really what he's looking for.
Turn 3 Challenger, turn 4's kind of locked up with Sword Eater already. He can now, if he wants to, skip the Challenger and just go coin 4 into 4 from this point. That curve is now available to him because of this pick, so I think it does make the most sense. I think in particular it's picked up to rush into Octobot, right, which ends up being a very smart choice in this position because he can now just coin it out, smack the Octobot. Yep, gives the nod. Fingers crossed that there was no Org Merchant, and this is just everything coming up Millhouse at this point.
Yeah. Bit of a wince from Thijs, and suddenly Thijs's game plan has become quite linear, at least at the moment, right? It's just Kazakus into Golem into Jandis and hope that's enough. The problem is against this style of warrior, I found it often isn't enough, right? Because you'd imagine Xblyzes has some good trades set up for the next couple of turns.
And those say poison. I think he needed poison deal 3 to 2 here if he was going to get out of it. Just because I know what the board is going to look like next turn. Like, Thijs doesn't know that, so he might be looking at something different. But just from my perspective, the poison deal 3 was the golem that he was going to need. Now it's just weapon swing, replay, re-equip weapon, shift to face.
Yeah, it's just aggro, right? Thijs just, as I mentioned before, has just very linear plans that don't feel good enough. Like this golem just not going to get there versus the board right now, never mind what's coming up next.
You can now go lots of plunders, lots of steps, though. He did have rush deal 3 to 2, though, which is definitely the next best scenario here. There was a chance that that did work if the shot didn't land middle, if that still remained 2-5. Obviously, that was the perfect scenario. Ooh, step it back to hand. Interesting. I was definitely lining that up with the prize plunderers in hand because that seemed like very, very cheap removal, like extremely high tempo removal.
I guess in a weird way, playing it next turn with prize plunderers potentially is kind of the same.
Well, no, because the golem will kill the targets that the prize plunderer would be able to hit, right? You would imagine.
Yes. I'm just looking at like Golem Neophyte prize plunderer.
I guess he could have done it the other way, right? Where you go Neophyte first, then Prize Plunderer the 4-1, and then hope that your Golem does work against the other 2 minions. That's fairly reasonable. Kind of like that. In theory, I kind of like that. Obviously, against a 3-12, that
it doesn't quite pay off.
Yeah.
And that's it. And look at the curve, right? Next turn crash, turn after can be whatever the heck xBlyzes wants. And they're troublemaker. Yeah, crash just a 5-11. So it was funny yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, but I think it was just the realization the more we saw Crash. I think like Gia was like, "What's a weapon does 10 damage?"
It does,
yes,
yeah.
It does a lot of damage. Like, never mind Crash just being a good card on itself.
Yeah, there's a reason why some people are putting Nitro Boost in their deck, right?
Oh yeah, I did destroy someone with effectively an Arcanite Reaper earlier today with that orange deck as well, which was very funny.
I got 1 mana Arcanite Reaper.
Because I got double casting off as well.
Ah, gotcha. Alright, it's a heck of a board though, from Thijs.
Yeah, xBlyzes just needs a bumper car, right, to really go off.
Yeah.
Again, though, if xBlyzes chooses so, he can gain 8 armor instantly from this crash, which again is a big deal because it will trade a minion and gain him 8 health.
Yes. Important also that xBlyzes has guaranteed bumper car next turn.
From Ringmaster.
He does have to play the Watley to get it, but if he can survive through those 2 turns, that is an extremely big deal, because he will then be able to clear up basically any board on the following turn with Playmaker Parade Leader, but now Playmaker Rakara. Is that worth going for immediately?
I think a standard bumper car is fine, right? Just to ping off an additional minion?
Yeah, no, I'm saying like you have a bumper card this turn, and then next turn you have the 1/1 Riders guaranteed for the following turn, and then that just smokes everything.
Sorry, I thought you meant the bumper cards next turn. I was like, oh, it feels slow. But yeah, this looks quite powerful as well.
Get the split, make your trade with the turtle, and then trade with the other Rakara last. Seems good. It's just one of those things, right, where, like, yes, probably xBlyzes could just take the 8 armor there from Turtle and just draw the bumper car and just have the 1-2 turn that probably wins the game, but, like, this also looks a lot like winning, right? So why take the risk of leaving up all that extra damage on board?
Oh yeah, I mean, as soon as the Rakara was drawn, right? Like even this Playmaker is a must-kill minion. The Rakara a must-kill minion, and if Thijs doesn't kill them, well, he better have lethal this turn because it only goes downhill from there, right? So xBlyzes has given Thijs a pretty straightforward choice here.
1 thief, he needs burn. All right, has a shadow step alongside it as well. That's a great looking passage for what his plan is right now.
Ooh,
Bombing missiles is clutch. And go Foxy Swindle now. Probably ends up stepping the 1 thief still because he just needs additional burn at this point. I don't think he's interested in anything else.
Stab, not bad pickup, but Devolving Missiles can be a little bit scary as well. Because if just 1 hits this crash, that's still going to be a 5-drop. Okay. Oh, he loses some damage to face here, though.
He does lose damage to face. It's a big deal. Apexis Blast. He finds the damage, though. Oh, is this 3-5 going to be relevant? Oh, Thijs.
Yeah.
Oh, no. It was never trading. Was it ever traded?
I don't think so. I mean, what would it have ever traded? What is a must-kill minion that Thijs literally could not leave alive? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Parade Leader or something, like, I don't know.
But like from the Devolve, you know, like...
Yeah, but that could come. Like, there was
I know it could, but I just mean the odds on 1 turning up that is a must-kill seems so low.
Yeah.
And
so -3, he would be at 14 this turn, so it's not particularly relevant. Thijs needs to be alive.
And xBlyzes.
Flurry? Cone of Cold? No, none of the above.
And xBlyzes is already nodding kind of happy, like, okay, well, if you've just spent 5 mana on drawing one card, then sounds good to me.
Brain freeze?
Okay.
No damage went face, though, is the problem. I almost felt like instead of the Vanessa, he could have gone Runed Orb to face and looked for, like... Instead of the Vanessa, he could have gone like Runed Orb to face and looked for Flurry or something instead, because at least then he'd done 2 damage to face that turn, right? Which is something, like he's progressed, I guess, but yeah. Very, very fine margins in the end. And as I mourn, I hope Viper did whatever he needed to do to recover from that last series quickly. Because Blyze does not mess about, and that is a 3-0 stomping of one of Hearthstone's all-time greats. And that is going to be Thijs' playoff run come to an end. It's yet another World Championship run, which is just going to fall ever so slightly short for Thijs, but he is still one of the absolute GOATs, undisputed, but it's going to be Blyze, one of the new breed, the young guns, who is going to step forward to take on another World Championship semi-finalist, another runner-up.
And again, you know, as you mentioned, Thijs is going to be now done for the season. He had a pretty incredible run, right?